So the big question is this: how do passionate golfers like you and I develop a stock shot day in and day out? A stock shot that's as reliable as the sun coming up in the morning. That's the question, and this podcast is the answer. Welcome to Stock Shot Secrets. Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of Stock Shot Secrets. This is Inside the Room, and today we have a very special guest. My elite lead instructor, one of our VIP coaches at the Golf Room Everywhere. And for everyone who's probably listening to this, you're probably connected to the Golf Room Everywhere. And quite frankly, probably working with this man right here on the screen, Alex Shadik. Alex, thanks so much for being here, buddy.
Oh, thanks for having me, Kyle.
So where are you right now? It looks like you're not at home. You're not in a Hawaii. You're not in a hut in Hawaii.
It says home there.
Is this home though?
Home there, but I'm not. No, I'm back where I grew up, Sioux Falls, South Dakota. Back for a little family gathering and that kind of thing. Seeing some people I haven't seen in a long time. It's been good to be back, but it's a little different.
Yes, that's awesome. Well, we're so happy to have you, and I want to just take this time, really just to let everyone get an inside perspective to you, right? Like, this is all about you and just kind of giving a little bit of the backstory, right? So for the members that are working with you inside the Golf Room Everywhere, which is kind of all over the world, or just maybe people are inquiring, or they're seeing you on TikTok or Instagram or whatever, because you're blowing that stuff up too. It's awesome. Yeah. So with that said, the journey of Alex all started in the Dakotas.
Yeah, I grew up born and raised in Sioux Falls, South Dakota. For high school, I got to kind of the Spark Notes version as I did the academy thing. I got fortunate enough to have the opportunity to start out at Hank Haney's academy. Just went for a summer camp after watching. There was an old TV show, The School of Golf.
Yes.
And they followed it for like years. So I went to summer camp there, and I by no means was like a stud player, but they liked me. So they gave me a little scholarship to hang out there. So I went there for a couple years and ended up kind of working my way down. That was high school.
Okay.
That was the first couple of years of high school. And then for my junior and senior years, when I found, both of our mentors, Mike Bender.
Yeah. So how did that change? Like, do you remember dating back? We're dating back some years, but
oh yeah.
How did that introduction to Mike happen for you? Because obviously going from Hank Haney, right? So this is probably when Hank Haney was working with Tiger, almost probably around that time. Just knowing you're in.
Yeah, it was right at the end there. It was I think they split up like right when I got there.
Yeah, so how did it go from Hank Haney to Mike? Do you remember that origin story of being introduced to Bender?
Absolutely. So there was, I liked where I was. It was fine. I got a lot better my freshman year, just getting to play through the winter, a South Dakota kid. And I felt, I'd gotten better, but I'd sort of plateaued, and there was a lot of changes going on at that school. I think they're going to change of ownership, the director of golf. So the guy, right under Hank at that time was the one who had kind of brought me in, and he left. And so I started looking at other options, and, we'd heard Mike just talking on, a PGA Tour radio show on like XM, and did a little research, and he's an Iowa guy.
Right.
And so I went down and met him and kind of did the introductory lesson thing. And it was just so much different than anything I had ever experienced before. Right. I've heard you talk about your first experience with Mike, and I would say mine was similar. It was everyone else I'd ever gone to was like, well, we're going to try this or feel this. And like, you go to Mike and he's like, you're going to do this, this, and this. And this is what's going to happen. And it always does.
And here's why. Right?
Exactly.
Like, it's always, that was the main thing with it when I did it, was always like the explanation as to why, rather than just like, we should have our hands go here, and you're just going to do it because I'm the authority figure. And it's like, right, but like, why? Like, why do I have to do that? And I think if people understand, which is what we do inside the Golf Room Everywhere, like if they understand the why behind what they're doing, now they're like, like it's very like linear. It's like, this is where I am, that is where I'm going, and there's no plan B. So it's like, if we believe that our hands should be at a certain spot, then it's like, and we understand why they should be at a certain spot, then it's like, let's just do that. And if it doesn't working, it's not because it doesn't work, because we already believe it. It's just, I suck at it and I'm not doing it.
Well, and I find, when the player can understand it fully, they're so much more motivated to make it happen. Yeah. Right. It's not like, I'm trying to do this for, I don't know why, like, and then you just give up on it pretty quick.
Yeah. And I know I'm kind of fast forwarding here, and we'll circle back. But what I think for you personally, just to applaud you, is that what you do so well for all of your students is you do an amazing job of encouraging and equipping them, and really in empowering them and equipping them to understand what a good golf swing looks like, right? So as the analogy I was actually telling another guy the other day is like when you're going to hire a marketing firm, right? And their marketing firm's like, hey, you're going to pay us $30,000 a month. We go, okay, fine. I'm happy to pay you $30,000 a month, but just so we're very, very clear, I'm going to pay you $30,000 a month, and I'm pay you for 1 year. And over that year, I'm even willing to pay more, but I need you to show me everything that you're doing so that now I know and I don't have to pay you anymore because I'm just going to pay my team to do it. But I am going to pay you, and I'm willing to pay you more. So, like, for us, it's like, yeah, you might, like, do the VIP program or do whatever program it is because there's, like, 9 gazillion options inside TGRE. But it's like you do an amazing job of not creating welfare students that are dependent upon you. You really entitle them, or not entitle them. You equip them so that they can ultimately, at the end of the journey, be their own coach, right? So that they can see their stuff and they know what's working, what's not working, and they can own their own patterns, right? So you go to Mike Bender's, you're there for your junior and senior year, and then where does that lead into college?
Yeah. So the funny part about the Mike thing is I think I was either in the inaugural or second graduating class of his elite program, which is kind of, exploded now.
Right.
But there was only a few of us. So it was like this great intimate, experience with him and Cheryl Anderson and everyone down there.
And was Ben the director then?
Yes.
Right.
Ben Pelicani is still a dear friend to both of us. He was the kind of head of the elite junior program day-to-day operation.
Yeah.
So I've spent more time with Ben than almost anybody.
Yeah, which is amazing. He's actually going to be on the podcast just following you. So, but it's awesome. Amazing that you guys are like teaching side by side now at the same capacity. So then that leads you to college. A really good, good college player, good amateur golfer. And then what about what was the difference between, because I think you had a stint, did you try on the professional side? You had some injury stuff, so kind of want to talk a little bit about that.
Yeah. So I played at William & Mary, and my college career was like, okay. I started having some wrist problems, just kind of a chronic thing over time. Amateur wise, I won a state amateur. So, I played a little bit of success, but won USGA event. But college career was all right. And after college, I moved back down to Florida. I was trying to figure out what to do. I like to say I played pro golf for like 3 weeks because.
Oh, wait, I got to shoot 62 every week.
Well, there's that. And then also my wrist got to the point I couldn't swing. So I needed to head back home and have a pretty big surgery.
Yeah. And then what kind of led into the because then you go into the college coaching side. And what do you find to be difference between college coaching versus what you're doing right now? Like just kind of the pros and the cons, and what kind of led you into the coaching of wanting to teach golf rather than, be around a group of 7 kids and kind of walking that way, which is good too, right? Nothing against it.
Yeah, no, I loved college coaching, but I got hurt when I was still down at Mike, and I'd been committed to be there, for the year. And so I just went to the academy every day after I got hurt, and I couldn't swing. And so I just watched Mike teach. I watched Cheryl teach. I made my way through that entire library in the academy. Yeah. And, it was funny because I couldn't even play golf, but I probably loved golf more than ever at that point.
Yeah.
And so I came home, had surgery, and got offered the assistant coaching job at South Dakota State, which is by no means a powerhouse, but we had a really good women's team at the time and a really good young men's team. And I had a blast. I loved every second of it. And coaching college golf is amazing. You're playing with, or, you're hanging out with 18 to 22-year-olds all day, figuring out on their own, and just kind of helping guide them throughout the whole process. The difference between, kind of standard instruction versus college coaching is very much in what the focus is on, right? Most players that come for a lesson or general instruction are looking to build a golf swing. College golf is like basically the entire school year you're in season. So you're not rebuilding golf swings necessarily.
100%.
You're doing everything else, so I did a lot. I did all our stat stuff. I did, I would break down the course before every tournament and build game plans and do things like that.
And I think that
as well as organized practice and all that.
that was a
stuff.
very probably super life lesson, just as like God's kind of got you on his path to doing what you're doing right now, because you're like in the perfect spot of what you're supposed to be doing. Is you're learning, because obviously at the Bender Academy and whatnot, like it's a lot of technical practice and a lot of technical skill. But now you take that same technical skill and now you're putting it into a coaching environment to where it's like, man, like, yeah, like your depth isn't like great, but like you got to figure a way to shoot 65, man. Like, whatever that is, a slice sounds good. Like, just get it in the hole in the least amount of shots, right? And that really ends up kind of morphing you probably a little bit like into a coach rather than a swing instructor, if you will.
Yeah, I like to say there's a little bit of a difference between a golf coach and a swing technician, right? And I to this day I still tell my players, hey, you got a tournament this week, like I don't care if you stand up to it left-handed, like you do what you need to do to get the ball in the hole. And we'll circle back and like plan for the long term later. Yeah.
What did you find, when you were down there at the two academies? What were the main differences between the Hank Haney system and we'll say Mike's system or our system, which is, basically one and the same for all intents and purposes? What were some of the big differences and some of the convictions that led on your heart that you go, looking back now, you go, you can do it this way, but I think this way is better, and here is why.
Yeah, well, I would say the big difference between the academies and the culture is IJGA was like this big thing at the time. Everyone knew what it was. We had like 130 kids, and there was very little technology used. I'm sure that's changed now. But I almost never saw my swing on video. They were just kind of getting into all that when I was there. I went down to Mike, and the very first thing we did is grab some video. So like I knew what I was actually doing, right? Because we've all seen our swing on video for the first time, and it is like you kind of get that breaks glass sound in your brain. Whoa. Like, whoa, what?
That's what I look like.
So I had that, I had that moment, and I was like, oh, that doesn't look like John. He had me up to Jonathan Bird. I was like, that looks a little different in transition. But I had no idea. I didn't. So I would say more than anything, it was the background that you get hanging out at Mike's place. Ben, who, you'll have him on and he'll dive into it all even further. But I got down there and he started handing out written exams. And I remember that, it was like, okay, like he was some swing questions, some like, some target game plan zone stuff. And I remember the first one, I filled it out. I was a good test taker. I did well in school, and I got it back and it was a 0. And I was like, oh, like, I don't know anything.
We do that with our kids. It's like a golf course IQ test. It's amazing.
So I like to say, I learned more about the golf swing and the golf game in my first 3 months there than in 2 years anywhere else I've been. Not to pick on any specific place or system.
Yeah, and I think that's something that's eerily similar to like all of the people even going through like the 21-day stock shot challenge. Like I'm on phone calls with his VIP guys and doing these phone calls right now, and it's like, man, like the amount of information that I'm getting through you guys in that 21-day challenge, which is just, it's more than anything they ever do. But that's just because together you and I, like, we're indoctrinating the student so that they can understand, like, what is truth. You know what I mean? Hey guys, I hope you are enjoying this episode of the Stock Shot Secrets podcast. If you are enjoying it, be sure to like this episode. Be sure to subscribe so you can always see when they're coming out. And most importantly, if you would be so kind to be able to share this podcast with other passionate golfers who are trying to get better and build stock shots, because it grows through you sharing it. Thank you so much for tuning in. And now back to Stock Shot Secrets. So that's amazing. So what about with all these lessons? I mean, we probably could have kicked off this in the first part of it, but there's probably a good argument that says that you're teaching more lessons in maybe than anybody on planet Earth in a given year. I mean, I told the Golf Digest guys that, and it was like, I did the math, and it was some ungodly amount. I was like, Alex teaches more. He teaches in 1 year what most people teach in 5. So with all of the things, like, because we've got a lot of passionate golfers that are on here, like, what are some of the things that you're finding that are just like, reoccurring themes for these players that are submitting videos, whether it's your VIP members or your one-on-one members that are just doing video submissions and they're not doing FaceTime lessons? Like, what are you finding that's just like, oh man, it seems like Like, it breaks our heart. It's like these guys just keep doing the same thing over and over and over again.
Alignment and pivot, right? Like that's 90, that at the end of the day, that's like 90% of it with, you know, and you see it every day too. If we can get our players to aim at the target or whatever's most functional for them, right? I like to say if our setup doesn't match our intention, like what chance do we have? It's like gripping a tennis racket backwards and trying to play, right?
Right.
So, you know, alignment and then pivot, man, those are the two things, just technically golf swing thing that I see every day. If we're talking about more broad approach, I think it's having a specific intention when you're practicing over the ball, right? Like it's got to be, am I warming up now? Am I working on my technique? Am I building some club face awareness skill, or am I competing with myself? Right? Because I see players that they try to do all four of those things at once.
Yeah. Yeah. Wait, you're not supposed to think about 47 things when you're over the ball?
Yeah. Well, yeah.
Say what?
You know, players are trying to work on their technique while also caring exactly what the ball is doing and trying to, you know, it's like,
would you mind? Because
it's a mess.
I think that segues perfectly. I love that story when you told Alex was at the golf room here, maybe 2 months ago? I forget the player that was. Was it Nick Watney? Who was the player you were talking about?
I think he was around.
But you were saying
Nick O'Hearn,
Nick O'Hearn, the practice habits. Can you go over that story again for our listeners because it kind of falls right in line with what he was doing with our program block random competes thing and what you're alluding to here.
Absolutely. So, you know, after college, I moved down to Florida and you know, I'd had some level of success, but I knew how to practice kind of, sort of, but I was the guy who would be at the course from sun up to sundown. Right. And spending some time with, you know, Nick O'Hearn and some other tour players down there was like, I learned I didn't have to put in that many hours to have like a really valuable day. And I would practice 10 hours and I'd leave and go, okay, well, I think I got better. Like, I don't know, like, you know, and so what Nick had me do was like break down my practice into thirds and then into thirds within that. Right. So, you know, 1/3 full swing, 1/3 wedges and short game, 1/3 putting. And within that, within each third, you break down into thirds again. It's like, okay, there's your technical work. There's your feel, your skill development, and then you're competing with yourself, you know, trying to do anything we can to maybe even put more stress on yourself than a tournament so that when you go out and compete, it like feels normal. Yep. And, you know, so if you just allow an hour to each, you know, section of the game, well, in 3 hours now, I've worked on my technique, my feel, and my competing for every section of the game. And it was like, you know, that used to probably take me 8 to get even remotely close to that level of work done.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think you do an amazing job of that. And really some of those skills you learned in South Dakota and being a golf coach, it's like we tell players, it's like, listen, man, you have no time to practice, like none, zero time. Like you're being a dad and a father and a husband and you work and all these things. So like the missus gives you an hour and a half a week to practice. So because you have an hour and a half a week to practice, you have no time to sit on the range and say, let me try something. Like you have to have a clear-cut plan that says, this is exactly what I am doing. And I know if I'm doing this, I am giving myself the greatest return on investment of my time to get better, right? Rather than say, okay, let me try this, and let me try that, and let me try this. And then you leave, and you're just like, I don't even know what I'm doing. And then the next week, you come back tomorrow, you don't even remember what you worked on yesterday, right? You're like, what was the thought I had yesterday? I forget. So
what felt good. But I was down, I was actually down hanging out with Mike in January. And, you know, I'd been through the whole system there. He's like, all right, well, you've went through the whole system. You played, you're teaching now. Like, when you look back, like, would you have changed anything? Or what do you think you could have done better? Right. And I was just like, I was not precise enough in my practice. I practiced more than anybody, but I was not precise enough in what I was doing, both technically and with my intention of how I was breaking down my time.
Yeah, 100% agree. 100% agree. Now, like segueing now, so now you go from there, like you move out to Hawaii.
Yeah.
How was living in Hawaii? And
Oh, living in Hawaii was great.
I mean, I think what's amazing about just the social media is you throw these tips. And you're like, here's this guy. Like, he doesn't have shoes on. The guy looks like he's in a straw hut.
Yeah, I think that was a little I think that really was jarring for some people.
Yeah, it's like,
Yeah, no. So I was in Hawaii, and I had a lot of clients, everything. I was just looking to build another touch point with them. Like, hey, and I was just going to throw up something that I get said to someone in a lesson that day, right?
yeah.
And I put stuff up there, and it kind of started building some momentum. But there were a lot of people on there that just assumed that I was just some random, person, because I wasn't in some high-tech facility. Yeah, I wasn't in some high-tech facility. I wasn't doing all that stuff. And then they'd go, I'd be like, they'd go look at my bio and be like, oh, that doesn't really compute. But I think that was part of what made it work, right?
Did you learn how to surf when you were out there?
Yeah, I like to say I can surf, but I'm not a surfer. Just like some people can golf, but they're not a golfer.
So you would say that you would shoot 95 on a surfboard?
Yeah, somewhere 95, 100, somewhere right in there.
That's
right. Probably the skill level.
Me too. Nice. Nice. So now you move back home, kind of doing your thing. With all the stuff that's kind of changed, what about just technology? Like, you've been around technology. How have you seen that's kind of just changed the game, changed instruction, and just the role of that in the golfer's journey, really?
Yeah, well, I mean, I think it all starts with video, right? I mean, before everyone had great cameras in their phones, like you couldn't even teach the way that I teach. So it's still a relatively new phenomenon. And with how good cameras are now, with all the different tools that we have at our disposal, it's just such an effective way to work with players, that players have so many more options. Now we've got Sportsbox available to us, which is allowing us to even put numbers on things way more precise than even, oh, you're shifting this much. Well, now we can say, okay, well, now you're swaying 3.5 inches. We don't want to sway 3.5 inches, right? Like, so there's really, I like to say, there's really no excuse now. You used to kind of have an excuse where it was like, oh, my teacher doesn't have availability for 6 weeks, and like, I'm kind of on my own till then. Well, not anymore.
Yeah, and I think that's the beauty of what we've together created at the Golf Room Everywhere, is the fact that, like, the two things, and I think that people who are listening to this will find that you and I are echoing the same exact ideology and thought processes, which is why, like, you've been an amazing partner in this whole battle of helping players around the world to get better. But it's really built around the two core concepts of, like, players need to have constant contact with a coach. Like, you have to have a question. When you have a question, you need an answer. Like, I would spend $400 to get a lesson, and then I would call and then I'd have the next day, I'd be like, I got a question. And I'd be like, hey, man, can I ask? And he'd be like, yeah, how about book another lesson? I'm like, I just paid $400 and I'm broke. Like, I can't do that. I just, should my wrist be like this or this? Right? So it's this constant contact. And then this idea of feedback in the fact that, like, we're creating ways so that in the comfort of someone's own hut in Hawaii, they can work on their golf swing if you've got, like, a stick in the ground and a trash can, like a noodle or a cone or whatever. So, and with all of that stuff, like, in that program, with all this technology, with you as, like, the tour guide, if you will, or the mountain guide going up Stockshot Mountain, like, you can basically do, like, fitness evaluations, and you can see what the player is and see if they, like you, like, had a wrist injury and how to work around that, and then building plans, and you got stats, and then you do the FaceTime lessons, which, to the point of the cameras, like, if working with you in person, which would be incredible, is a 10 out of 10, a FaceTime lesson is like a 9 out of 10. Like, it's the same thing. I mean, you're not on the lesson tee groping students. You're just miss the noodle, man. And it's like, so it's like the same. So, like, I think that's the beauty, is we've created something where they can have constant contact with Alex, and like, you can walk with them through the journey. I cut you off there. What were you going to say?
Yeah, no. Well, I was just going to say, I've been fortunate enough back here. I work with a really, really good junior from this area. So I've gone out and worked with him a couple times this week. And at one point I was like, is this really any different than what we normally work together? And he's like, no, like, it's not like I'm putting my hand, I'm just putting the stick in certain places in which they can do it too if they know where to put it.
Instead of you standing behind them, you're just standing behind them in a camera, and you're like, a little more depth, more turn, like you swayed that time. So that's awesome. Well, with all of that stuff, like, with people going through the remote program, because basically, aside from you working with that, you've worked with hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of golfers And
Yeah.
from the bottom of my heart, with no lying whatsoever, you've never had a person ever leave, ever, because they go, Alex's stuff wasn't good. It was usually because Alex has given me everything I need to be great. So with that, is there one person just kind of signing off that like you can remember like as a testimony that's just like, man, this guy's like it changed and his game was way different. Can you think of one of those members that come to mind by chance? Not to put you on the spot, but
Yeah, no, there's a couple where maybe they came as like a 5 to 10 and their whole thing was like, I just want to break par, right? Like that like nothing else matters.
Yeah.
And that moment when they do is like that's like the win, right? That's the one. So that's probably the best feeling. I like that one even more sometimes than, a picture with the trophy. Like that's all great. But you compete long enough and you're going to win one. But you really got to earn like dropping a scoring average like that.
Yeah. Well, Alex, I mean, I can't thank you enough. You were the first coach we ever hired, and you're leading the charge and leading the pack. So it's been amazing. And for any listener, obviously, Alex, where could they find you on social media, just so they could maybe see me the old videos in the hut? You're not in the hut anymore, but like,
well, that's part of the beauty about the social media thing is it's kind of evergreen. Like you can just go back and find them, right? So Alex Shadik Golf, my name, golf thrown at the end. You can kind of see everything we do. I'm sure I'll have to check. I'll make sure there's links to, what you can do to get more involved.
Yep. And if anybody would like to work specifically with Alex is a VIP coach. So he's working with the super committed golfers that are inside the golf room everywhere, all around the world. So just send an email to support@thegolfroomeverywhere.com. And then we can get you set up with Alex and he can be your coach, because he's not a swing instructor, but an actual coach. So, Alex, thanks so much for joining me. Enjoy your time in South Dakota, and we'll talk to you soon, buddy.
Yeah, thank you so much, Cal.
See ya. Hey, thank you so much for listening to the latest episode of Stock Shot Secrets. I would love to invite you to Columbus to come see me and hang out with me and build a personalized plan for you and your game. If you would want more information about building your personalized plan and coming to Columbus and hanging out, just email us at info@thegolfroom.com and we will get back to you and set your visit for an epic red carpet experience at TGR in Columbus, Ohio.